Well, more signs today that the U.S. and Iran are inching closer to war. This after an Iranian warplane spots a U.S. aircraft carrier crossing the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this strait is critical because it's the only sea passage to the open ocean for exporting oil. Over 15 million barrels of oil passes through here every day. That's about a third of the world's oil shipments by sea. The aircraft carrier Iran says is spotted is part of the Fifth Fleet, which is based in Bahrain, not too far away. Well, Iran now flexing its muscles and threatening to cut off oil supply from the waterway. This is a response to the West imposing sanctions on the country, and the U.S. is using its Navy, vowing to use its Navy stationed in the Persian Gulf to stop Iranians from blocking the passage. Well, in the wake of these events, is this another sign that war with Iran is just around the corner? I want to bring in Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer, Senior Fellow with the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Welcome, Anthony. So what is happening here? Is war becoming the only option?
No, I really don't believe so. I think all sides will prevail in thinking this thing through. The Iranians have a great deal to lose. One of the things that I'd like to mention is the fact that they produce about 1/3 of the crude oil of the world that we currently have in circulation. So one of the folks who would be hurt the worst by a conflict in this area would be the Iranians. I don't think they're that irrational. Secondly, this is something that goes back to President Carter. Jimmy Carter back in the 70s said, as liberal as he was, that there was no way we as the Americans would ever stand for the Straits of Hormuz being cut off by anyone. Therefore, I just don't think that the Iranians are willing to call our bluff on this. And frankly, I think they would suffer as much, if not more than anyone else, because their oil can't get out either.
Also want to talk more about the significance of this waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. This is a crucial passage in terms of shipping oil in the region. If Iran blocks this passage, which they are vowing to do, if the U.S. moves forward with these sanctions, what effect will that have?
Well, huge. It would jack up the price of oil globally. We're talking about prices, and I think I'm conservative here, $5 to $6 a gallon. I mean, unheard of prices. And most importantly, you're talking about a huge, huge hit to the global economy. And this includes all of our friends in Asia as well, because they need the oil and more than we do. We, the Americans, are down to about 16% of our oil coming out of this area of the world. Therefore, we would be hit, but not nearly as bad as the rest of the planet. So, I think all sides would, I'm hoping they will think this thing through before any sort of armed conflict would come to fruition on this.
And what exactly do you think Iran is really trying to achieve here? I mean, this is a response to the sanctions. Do you see the U.S. backing off as a result of this?
Well, not really. And I think the sanctions are really a paper tiger. The only people who have signed up so far for the sanctions are us. The rest of the world have ignored the call for additional sanctions. So I think the Iranians are overreacting. Simply put, it's saber rattling. I don't think the Iranians are going to be slowed down in any significant way. And let's talk bluntly about their nuclear program. I'm one of those who believe, based on my sources, they have at least 2 nuclear weapons at this point in time. The problem is they don't have a delivery system, which will take another 18 months to 2 years to put together. So I think we need to understand what the realities are. I don't think there's any practical way for the West to bomb Iran and prevent it from getting the bomb. And on the converse, I don't think the Iranians really want to prompt a Western response which would result in them losing men, material, or military capability.
Want to talk about military capability. Want to bring this up as they spotted a U.S. aircraft carrier in the region. Want to take a moment to compare and contrast Iran and the U.S. Navy fleet. So Iran is equipped with 28,000 personnel, 65 aircraft, 26 submarines, 5 frigates, 225 vessels and warships. But that is nothing compared to the U.S. Navy fleet with 324,000 personnel, 3,700 aircraft, 75 submarines, 27 frigates, and more than 406, that's almost double, that of Iran, vessels, warships, and destroyers. So I want to get your reaction. Clearly, we are at an advantage when it comes to being equipped.
That's correct. Let's remember that we have a global responsibility. They don't. So those numbers are a bit misleading by the fact we can't have all of that there. There's just no room for it anyway. Secondly, the advantage we really do have is in technology. We can spot them coming. We can do things with cruise missiles. And frankly, a lot of the equipment they're currently using, to include the Air Force, is from the 70s. Some of the same weapons we sold to Shah are still in service, to include F-14s and F-4s, which have long since left our inventory. So I think they're at a huge disadvantage. However, it doesn't change the fact that they could badly hurt us by focusing on the Straits of Hormuz. And clearly, their objective is not to defeat us, it's to interfere with our interests and our responsibility to keep the straits open.
And as we are seeing this escalating tension, you know, a confrontation in the Gulf could certainly impact the region and world peace. How far do you see this escalating?
I don't see it going much beyond where it's at right now. Again, I think we're going to see a lot of saber rattling. The only thing I would think that would take this to the next level is if the Israelis decide to take on the nuclear program and do a unilateral strike. Then there's going to be a lot of issues relating to, do we, the U.S., fall in with them to help them, or do we back off? And that's a question that no one seems to know the answer of. So I do believe you'll see the Iranians continue to make us attempt to overreact. But I think their focus really is going to be on Iraq, believe it or not, trying to gain more influence in Iraq. So why would you want to interfere with doing that? And I think that's what they're really going to focus on. The rest of this, I do believe, is saber rattling for the most part.
So what about, do you see then President Obama declaring war with Iran?
No, I don't. There's three elements here in competition. You have the military warfighters who have plans to do this. We always had plans to go in and do something. You have President Obama, who's been very clear and reluctant to take any military action. And then you have the presidential candidates. The Republicans are all literally trying to say that they would go to war with Iran, which I think the rhetoric is hugely unhelpful in the current situation. So those three elements are right now in conflict. Frankly, I just don't see the Americans doing anything to provoke the Iranians, but clearly there is interest in keeping that strait open no matter what it takes, and that would require President Obama to take military action if the Iranians really did something to close it off.
Certainly, we are seeing a lot of rhetoric, especially from the Republican candidates. I mean, how do you think that impacts the chances of coming to a peaceful resolution in the region when we are seeing so much of this harsh rhetoric, almost pushing to go to war from these candidates?
We have to look at this as a chess game, not a checker game. I will say this directly: the Republican candidates, what they're saying is that they're like they're like checker players. We need to look at the region from the perspective of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Syria. We have to understand all of those things and not simply push on one and assume that we can get away with it. So I think that the wisest course of action going forward is accepting the Iranians will probably have, if not already, a nuclear weapon, and try to deal with them as a regional power and not provoke them. And I think the Republican rhetoric is not helpful at this point in time. I don't think the Republican candidates, even if they were elected, would be able to follow through with any military action, even if they wanted to. Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Anthony, thank you for weighing in on this. That was Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer, Senior Fellow with the Center for Advanced Defense Studies.